Hi, everyone. It's Robin Cavallaro with the Robin Cavallaro Group of Remax 100. And today I have one of my favorite people in the world, Miss Char Seuffert, straight out of Florida. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So it was awesome seeing you last week.
Oh
Definitely
my,
not enough time, but it was great.
I'm
So
trying to words, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
yeah, it's always fun. It was two things I learned about you last week that I did not know. One, you're from South Africa. I still
Yes,
need to figure out how you got from there to here. And two, your husband's retired Air Force.
yes,
Yeah. So you're down in the lovely state of Florida. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Southwest Florida. So, hurricane. Well, we always had a joke that we'd never get hit by hurricanes, but unfortunately we did. And I think you were there with me when that was all happening. So that was crazy.
mhm.
Yes,
That was scary. Very scary. So yeah. So you're like in the Fort Myers area, not far from Naples and
Naples, Sanibel Island. We're very, very lucky. So we've got a lot of different towns within 20, 25 minutes of us, including a lot of islands. So
yeah.
we call it nice and we feel like we live where we vacation. So
It's gorgeous down there because when we went to Marco Island last year for a lead, I had never been. I had no idea what it looked like. And I was in absolute awe because it is drop dead gorgeous. And it's not like the animated Disney stuff that you think of Florida for the rest of us who don't live there. Yeah.
miles of canals. So that's something that's unique about Cape Coral. We have more canals than they actually do in Venice. So a lot of our life here is not so much beach, it's boating. So with boating comes freedom and islands and dolphins and manatees and incredible fishing. So I believe Boca Grande, they say, is the world's best tarpon fishing. And I have been lucky enough to try and catch tarpon, and it is an experience. So it's not successful. Yeah, I'd rather watch it because it was so much fun to watch people try and catch, the tarpons.
So those are the giant ones, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I've caught rockfish. You
yeah,
know, we're talking 20 pound, I mean 20 inch
right.
enough to feed two people rockfish. Yeah. So
I would say gentleman's fishing. So yes, I'm a lousy fisherman, but I I enjoy all the fresh fish around us.
that's awesome. So how did you go from South Africa to Florida?
Wow. Okay. So I was born and raised in South Africa. I have seven generations there. My very, very long story short, my moved here when I was 14 with my parents. My stepmother was a citizen, and it was the right time in their life to move over here. I have three siblings, and so we all came over. And luckily enough, my stepmother had family in Tampa. So we ended up in Lutz, and then we moved to Cape Coral, which Florida is very much like South Africa as far as climate and sunshine. And, I've always grown up around beaches and water until my husband went into the military. I don't think we saw water in 15 years.
Unless you were in the air flying over it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So which bases were you stationed at before while he was active?
MacDill Air Force Base, then Sumter, then I think the requisite Korea. So he was in Osan for a year. Then we did the whole Gulf War
Yeah.
and a TDY. So it was, he was back and forth to Turkey and different other places. We were in my favorite base of all was Ramstein in Germany. And then we ended up at Luke Air Force Base, which actually I take that back. Luke was my favorite Air Force Base. That's where we raised our children because when we came back, they were 2 and 4. And so that moved, and that's where we bought our first house.
Hmm. So where is Luke Air Force Base?
Luke is in Phoenix, Arizona. So it's in
Okay.
the mountains. And we came from Germany to Arizona, and it's like night and day, big, beautiful, green, luscious forests. And then we came to Arizona, which was brown But Arizona is actually stunningly beautiful, just completely different.
Yeah, instead of trees, you have cactus.
Pretty much. Yes.
Yeah. And instead of rolling hills, you have sand dunes.
We have sand dunes and but it's like no matter where you go, there's just, I don't know, it's such a magical world and there's so many
Yeah.
things. When you're in the military, you just have friends that are family to you. So I think being a military spouse, you make such close friendships because you're
Mhm.
all everybody's from somewhere else, everybody's alone. And we would always, no matter what base we were at, we would always adventure out and make sure that we never stayed, we stayed home, but we always explored the areas that we lived in.
And see, I had a completely different experience because of my ex being Coast Guard, well, with the Navy, I was working, I met him while I was at that job. So I had my friends outside of the military. And if you're a girlfriend, you're not accepted into the wives club.
They were mean, even if you were worse sometimes.
And then, it's like, then we went to, and once we were in DC and then um, Norfolk, then back to Connecticut, and then back to DC. It's like I had my job, I had my life, and the Coast Guard is about this big.
Right.
So it's a whole different world than what it was in the Navy and what y'all had in the Air Force. Yeah. A little bit jealous, but it's okay. I'll get over it. Oh, so, how did your kids do with the PCSing each time?
Well, they were really fortunate. So my daughter was born in Sumter, South
Eh,
Carolina, 6 weeks old when we got the magic orders. And then we moved to Germany. We lived in Germany for just a couple of years. They closed Ramstein down, which was really, really very upset. I could have lived in Germany for the rest of my life. I absolutely loved it. And funnily enough, my son was born in Germany, and he was 6 weeks old when we got orders back to the States. So both of my kids grew up in Phoenix at Luke Air Force Base. We were there for 16 years raising our kids. So
Okay.
I never really remember or really were part of big moves. So they had a very stable, for the most part, life.
So y'all were very lucky that you got to spend most of your time at one base.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, because I've talked to some women and it's like, oh, we were here for a couple of years, here for a couple of years. And one lady was saying we didn't even bother to unpack because we knew it was temporary. And I'm
But
like,
yeah, no, I think our first 3 years he was gone at least a year and a half.
that's tough.
And then
Yeah.
I was 5 years, let's see, we were McDill, Shaw, the war, in Germany. So a lot happened in the first 5 years. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
but it's still, and the whole Gulf War was completely, nobody knew what was happening then, you know?
We
It,
had
yeah, because we were lucky. It's like my ex had just gotten commissioned and he was going to Newport when everything happened. So he was going to Newport for school and then his ship left for the Gulf. And by the time he finished with his school, the ship was on its way back and it was over.
right.
We didn't
Not
know it was lingering on for, quite a long, for many, many years.
yeah. Well, he was in crash recovery at that time, and he was not on the first deployment from Char Air Force Base, which was
uh,
from the night. So that was General Horner. So you had General Schwarzkopf from the Army, and Horner, and so he was on the second deployment. And yeah, he was gone about 8 months at that time, and I just unearthed our videos, our VHS. He got a 5-minute tape that he got months to send home. I'll have to send it to you. It's funny.
oh my God, I bet that's hysterical.
It is because we had no other ways. I think we got a call once a week, was 5 minutes, and then they hung up
Mhm.
as well. So, it's a very different world these days than what it was then, but a lot of letter writing and gift sending and whatnot. So,
And you number all the letters so that they know which order to open them in.
Absolutely. Yes.
And yeah, because with him on a ship, there were no calls unless they went into port, and then he could call collect.
Yeah, we didn't
So,
even. So I remember AT&T was like a big deal in our lives because that was that call that we got to. They got a free call because
ooh.
they're or videos or anything. So it's really nice.
And now they got an iPhone, they just flip it open, FaceTime their family here is like, you're gone, but you're not gone. So I'm like, dang. I mean, we didn't even have email back then. So it
It was much more quieter and pleasant, but I'm just teasing. All the
was, it was. And thankfully there's no memories of stupid decisions back then either. So win-win. So how'd you get into real estate?
We were in Luke Air Force Base, and my husband was enlisted,
Yeah.
VA, but he chose to stay in as enlisted, and we were very, very poor. We had, I mean, this is the God's honest truth. We had no family there. We relied on friends for babysitting. His shift constantly changed, so it was either night shift or mid shift. And I was working two jobs, and we had talked to somebody years ago, and he said, "Oh, you should do real estate." So it was something that we did together. We both got our
Okay.
license. There was a lady named Nancy Valela who's on my Facebook. Her and her husband were instrumental in helping us get to that point, and Steve and Angie Cook. And I just, I worked at Discount Tire in the corporate headquarters in the computer department with a 6-month old and a 2-year-old. And then I got a part-time job at the post office at night, and it was horrible because I'm a mom, and you didn't get to spend any time with the kids. And Eric was always still deployed. It was 90-day rotation, and he was just always deployed. And I started selling to my friends that I worked with in the post office. And when I sold my sixth house, I went into real estate full time. It was awesome.
Oh,
And
that's fun.
the post office, a lot of them were to military people that my husband worked with. That I look back now and I'm like, why would they give me a chance? But they did. Larry Grice, so many of them are on my Facebook. So I think everybody pretty much that my husband worked with in his squadron, I sold them a house.
Oh, fun.
I got started.
That's is like so what's weird is like with my ex, he was officer. So there were very few people, especially when you got to when I started in Connecticut, that were his rank or higher. Because most of the people there were enlisted, that it was impossible to get business from the academy.
Right.
Um, and then we moved back to DC. We were living in Southern Maryland, and most of them were either on base or closer in, or it was hard to meet them. So you had quite the little lineup going there. Like, next, you're PCN, fine, you buy a house with me. You're PCS and out, fine, you sell your house with me. In and out.
It's always been, military spouses and military families stick together.
Absolutely.
Thrown into stuff without the right support system. So your support system is, I call it familia, our familia that's around us. And so we're still friends with literally every person that we were ever friends with in the military to this day.
That's awesome. And I can see how it's so different for us because and I've said this before. I was the one who had to deal with the movers, the packers, find the house, research the schools. I mean, yes, my ex was active in it, but he didn't have all the time to invest in it. S- You know, and it's like we were the boots on the ground to find where we were moving to, and I'm sure you were too. And it's like everything fell on our shoulders to figure it out.
I don't think he was ever home when we were moving.
Yeah.
I don't actually one time where, yeah, he was always deployed or TDY or something. So it was always the wives, and we just did what we had to do, and that's what we did.
Yeah, it's like, all righty, we got this. We
So,
got this.
and
Yeah.
I'm you like when people panic about moving, oh, I've only got a month to get my house together. I'm going, easy peasy. You just need 4 days, you know?
I,
So,
it's well, and that's the thing. When we moved back to DC, we were in Maryland. My ex was staying in Connecticut for another month because he was still attached to the academy. You know, kids were with me. We had the entire house unpacked, decorated, organized in 1 week. And that was with two little darlings underfoot. You know, and when I moved into this one, I'm like, all right, 4 days, we're done. And people
it's
are like, how do you do it so fast? I'm like, how do you not?
right. If you give me 30 days, it's going to be very stressful. If you give me 4, it's just going to happen. So,
Mhm. And I like the tiny little time frame where I don't have much time to think about it. Just get it done, make it happen. Yeah, give me the boxes and get out of the way. So how did you go from Phoenix back to Southern Florida?
we thought we'd live forever in Phoenix. Phoenix had a really bad market crash back in 2000, and I would say 8 through 10.
Uh-huh.
And we had family in Texas, and Texas really didn't have a crash. Um, where the rest of the country had a crash, Texas was pretty. They had a lot of rules in place. So we moved to Texas, loved Texas, but it wasn't home. Our daughter had graduated college. She went to Northern Arizona University. Our son was in Louisiana. He was a big lacrosse player, and then went to Louisiana Tech. And it was just Eric and I, and we're like, why are we here? So we lived, loved it, but it was time to come home. Which home to me has always been Cape Coral,
Yeah.
always. I don't know why. It's home. I'm a nomad.
And then so were you with Remax and Phoenix or other brokerage?
So just like most young and dumb agents, excuse me, we movements, right? Everybody always offers you something greener. So I started with Century 21, which was a fabulous launching pad, and then I went to work for the most incredible broker, Nate Martinez. And I think you know Nate.
Uh-huh, I do. He sends me an email once a week.
He does Monday mornings with Nate.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So I worked with Nate. I actually started, I think, with him September 1st. Excuse me, September 11, 2001. Sorry, my mind is just that date. And he was instrumental, and I wish I'd listened to him a lot more than what I did. A lot of my success to Nate and his team, which most of them are still with him. It's crazy. 25 years later, literally his entire office staff is with him still. So that says a lot for Nate.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So then when I came down to Florida, I immediately went to Remax. Remax to me is home.
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to explain to someone earlier, is the token recruit call. And I'm like, you don't understand, we're not just coworkers, we're family. We're so much closer than just a work friend. The hugs are deep, the laughs are amazing, the tears are real when you leave. And
Surprised sad I was. Not surprising, truly deeply sad to leave last week. I
I know.
really.
It's like I'm ready to get home, but my God, you feel like you're leaving home. It's not like anything I've ever experienced before. Yeah,
I think family's pretty darn special. So there's not an agent that won't help you.
no.
If like our luxury event that we went to, I learned so much in 2 days. I could have gone to class for 6 weeks. What I took in days is so much more than what I would ever have learned. And it's like a full-time mastermind class. Sing, 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 and building on top of your foundations, and just sharing from across the country. Like your market is so different than our market right
It
now.
is. Yeah.
So, always very dynamic.
Well, it's like when we were eating lunch, it was like one nugget after another just getting dropped on the table, like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's calm this down. And so and it was, I walked away from the lunch with just as much knowledge as I did from some of the sessions.
Absolutely.
And, that was how it was the whole time, where it's like we're laughing and we're brainstorming, and someone would go, oh yeah, well, I do this. And we're like, oh, explain. And it was awesome. So now I know your market is changing a lot because of insurance and taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because, you've always got those loud and whatever people on TikTok that don't really live here, but, they've got the crash, boom, thud, world's coming to an end theory. But I always joke and say the only thing crashing in Florida is the waves. We have definitely, we have had 1,000% increase in inventory over the last 2 years. We've also had a 30% price reduction since January. However, our prices went up 100, 200%, sometimes more than that over a 2-year period. So you have
That's
to,
crazy.
where you just spit out random, doom and gloom numbers. And our market, we're selling a lot of homes. So it's a very good time for buyers, even though our interest rates are higher. We are able to negotiate, I'm sure like you, we're able to negotiate seller concessions for buy downs. There is creative financing out there. There is always a way to make something work. And with the price reductions, the taxes are down. So in other words, $1 million house, maybe you're getting for 750 ish around, that's saving you, 3, 4 thousand a year in taxes. We did have a big increase in insurance, which is natural after hurricane. We are trying, as more and more carriers come back into the market, to reshop those. But I would say that there's always mitigating factors in every market. And the fact that we took a still standing 9-hour full hit for 9 hours where it just didn't move, and the resilience of the people here. The islands of Malachey and St. James City and Bokeelia, which are little islands, you're talking 12,000 maybe population, total got decimated, just absolutely decimated. But if you came through here now, you will still see those signs, but you'll see so much more than that. We have our telephone poles are painted. It's very artsy, fun, eclectic, beautiful, very patriotic. And so the telephone poles are painted with the permission of our electric company. So you've got all these different artists that have painted. There's a lot more joy here than, and there's definitely a lot of sadness, but I think we're seeing more of the sunlight and the future as things have come back together. So we really haven't had a hurricane in
Yeah.
60.
Please no more. It's like, yeah, because all of Florida has gotten the mess beat out of it over the last few years. And it's like, all right, Mother Nature, have a Snickers bar, calm down, leave them alone. Just go play in the middle of Atlantic where nobody gets hurt. Yeah.
Right.
And
We're
give
on the kind of protected by the mangroves. We always seem to be on the outskirts. So this one was a real doozy that, like I said, in 60 years, we had a little bit. We are very lucky in Cape Coral. Very, very.
And that's like when we were in Norfolk, Norfolk is protected by the Outer Banks.
Right.
So the poor Outer Banks, they get hit, but then by the time it would get over to Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, either it's veering out to sea because of the way the land is, or it's weakened to tropical storm. So it wasn't as bad. And now I'm right off the Chesapeake Bay. So in the rare occasion that it goes around the Outer Banks, it's still hitting other land before it gets to us. And we only had one bad one in Norfolk, and I think that was, I want to say Isabel, and then we had Irene here.
Yeah.
And we're like, please, this year, none, zilch, nada. We don't need them, don't want them. So, but y'all are used to it, so we're not.
We're used to the hurricane warnings, not so much the hurricanes, but
I don't think
it's
anyone could ever get used to a hurricane. It's, the little bit that I sat through, because when we had Isabel, the kids were 3 and 5, they were babies, and my ex had to be on base. He couldn't be with us. And I remember the fireman came and knocked on my door and he goes, "The house across the street is going to be on fire soon. Just stay in your house. You'll be perfectly safe." And I'm like, and I'm watching these 80-year-old ladies carry stuff out to their car. And there's nothing I can do because I can't leave 2 babies inside the house to go help them because there's a giant pine tree that's like swaying back and forth. And I'm like, it's going on my house any second. And fortunately, at that point, the power got cut off, which once it did, the sparking from the power lines, there was no fire. But it was, and that was only a hurricane, a level 1. So I'm
we're,
like,
we're four, but I mean, honestly, 183 miles versus 185. We were cat five.
yeah, this was a baby storm and it was terrifying. So I can't imagine going through what y'all did. And we had tree limbs in the backyard and leaves. Y'all
Yeah,
had houses
right,
removed. Yeah,
right. Yeah, no access onto or off the islands.
yeah, I can't imagine it. So, well, I'm gonna be saying serious prayer y'all get spared this year. So, but
Yeah, you know.
yeah. So do you have a lot of military living in your area?
We do. We have a lot of retired military. Closest base to us is MacDill, which is about 2 hours away. But we do have an amazing VA clinic here that
Uh-huh.
is art that has. You always hear the negative about the VA clinic. I can unequivocally tell you that everybody here loves the VA clinic. They're really good to our veterans, and we're also Purple Heart City, Cape Coral. So basically, if you're going to Home Depot or Lowe's, you're getting special parking for the veterans, for Purple Hearts, and for veterans. So we're patriotic here, very loud and proud about our military. We do have a Coast Guard station here in Fort Myers
Ooh.
Beach, which was instrumental in helping during the hurricane. Um, so we are surrounded by veterans, and a lot of people retire down here. There is no state income tax, so that is really helpful to them. And yeah, we need a good commissary closer. That's all I have to say.
Right. Yeah, that I would love to come see because like I said, we were coasties for 19 years. So and I'm right here by the Naval Academy. So our commissary is not very big.
Right.
Andrews has a much bigger one, Pax has a much bigger one, but it is what it is. Yeah. But next time I come down there, I want to see more Fort Myers because I came in, drove down to Marco Island, did that, drove back to the airport, and flew home. It was such a whirlwind trip. So crazy.
Well, you always have an open invite at my house.
And you
Uh,
always have one here. And yeah,
yeah,
we can go down and visit your niece's boyfriend at the academy. So
absolutely. Yeah, he's on the rowing team, so that's a lot of fun.
he's Navy or
Maybe, yeah.
yeah, it's
He's pretty amazing. He's doing Navy warfare. Who knows? I don't know. He's just an exceptional human being as they all are. So
that's a whole different world. And again, I joke, there's no way I could do what they do. Absolutely zero. Yeah. I couldn't have made it through one of the academies. Within a week, they would have been booting my little butt out. Going, no, 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 you're not disciplined enough. You're not strong enough.
well, I with the amount of fun. So yeah, you
Yeah. So you broke up just for a little second. So yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, it's always wonderful seeing you. And then I can't wait to see you in Napa. and we'll have fun then. And meantime, next time you're coming up here, I got a guest room.
I
So
let's definitely make it happen.
yeah, and we'll get Connie. The three of us will go out, grab a drink, catch up, and doesn't matter if it's with a different brokerage or not. We're all friends. We all get along. It's all family. So yeah.
Remax and realtor family for sure.
Yes. Well, I adore you more than you know, and I'm so glad you did this with me and truly appreciate you.
Thank
So
you, and thanks for all you do. And I know you, a good part of your business is veterans, and that is honestly the proudest part of what I do is working with veterans. It's
oh,
always,
absolutely. I mean, I just had a settlement on last Friday, which I was exhausted because we didn't get to bed till 3 o'clock flying back from Napa, I mean from Tahoe. And met them at 11, did the walkthrough, did the settlement at noon. It was the first time they were seeing their house. And I mean, like, I'm like this, I'm like, what if they hate it? And he's standing there just looking out the window and he's got this look on his face, like, what did I do? And I go, is everything okay? He goes, I love this. I am in love with this house. I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you. And the one I have Friday is same thing. They will not see their house for 2 weeks after they close.
oh,
And then I have one more in July that they won't see it until middle of August. And talk
they,
about the stress. I'm like, oh my God.
you
Yeah,
know, and I think we learn to listen, and I think, it's just an honor and a privilege to work with veterans, truly every day.
it is. I appreciate it. And I think, when we were PCS, and I always appreciate a realtor who actually understood what I was going through and wasn't just trying to talk me into doing something. You know,
One that I found before we head out is, and I speak from personal experience as well, a lot of veterans are afraid to buy homes.
Mhm.
And we would never have thought if it hadn't been for my husband's boss inviting us over for barbecue, and he'd been trying to talk us into buying, and he brought over his realtor and his lender, literally forced us. And that is truly how we bought our house. We were afraid of rejection. We were afraid we didn't fit in that little square hole. And throughout my almost 30 years of selling real estate, that is actually very normal for people to think. So when I find a veteran that hasn't bought a house and maybe they're in their 50s or their 60s, I'm selling them a house. I'm going to do everything I can to help them get into a house. And it's actually very easy. And there's just a lot of myths out there, and it's very unfortunate. So hopefully they'll do a better job, as the new, not new military, but each class, and maybe educate them on how they should buy a house and how many successful millionaires there are that maybe never made more than, well, they never made a high rank, but yet they held on to them, built a portfolio, and now travel the world and take 90-day cruises, and maybe they only made $6,000 a month tops their entire career. There's just wonderful opportunities through real estate for our veterans, so I hope they utilize their VA loan.
Well, here's an interesting story. I got a new buyer that I'm working with. We're trying to get everything in place so we can actually get started. And he wants to buy a house with his dad, who is 86, has a VA benefit, and has never owned a home.
How sad is that?
And he wants his dad to be able to own a house before he dies.
Oh,
To know
absolutely.
what it's like to have his own home. Because, it's like they rented and then he moved in with him. And it's just been one of those processes that he's never had a place of his own. And I can't imagine that feeling. Um, if it wasn't for my in-laws, we probably wouldn't have bought. But my father-in-law was told my ex, he's like, y'all need to start looking at a house. You need to start thinking about it. And once we did the numbers, we found out that our mortgage payment was less than our rent on a much bigger house. And then when you factor in what we could write off for taxes, We're like, awesome. But we didn't use our VA loan until we moved here as our fourth house. The
Oh,
first three we did conventional. Because again, our first two houses were 169,000. Ironically, they were the exact same price, exact same interest rate.
really?
Uh, and so we had the 5% to put down on the first one. Let's say, yeah, because we did the 80-15-5 on the first one. And then on the second one, we did 80-10-10. And for those question, what that means is 80% in the first mortgage, 15% in the second mortgage, 5% down, or 80% down, 10% second mortgage, 10% cash. And we had that because we had sold our house in Norfolk, in Stafford. And then we went to Connecticut. We got talked into the worst mortgage program ever. Again, we did the 80-15-5, so 5% cash, 15% second, 80% down. The 80% was interest only.
Wow.
Mhm.
And it was available for you the whole time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you
And
didn't
so, but again, just like so many people say to you, we were terrified they wouldn't work with us because we were using a VA mortgage.
at all. Yes. But people, that is the perception for
Yeah.
buyers. It's not accurate at all. Get a good realtor. We will go fight your battles for you and get you in a house. Absolutely. I can fight for my veterans all day long, as can you. And I honestly think that the underwriters for the veterans are actually because there are, you have to move all the time and there's different circumstances. I think they're a lot more flexible.
They are, as long as you're using one that actually answers their phone on the weekends.
It's
Yeah. But it's like up there, the broker was amazing. He still adore him. The agent I had was so eager for me to buy her listing
right.
that I almost had, and rest in peace, not gonna say anything negative. But I finally got to the point, I'm like, show me a different house or show me a different realtor. Because I didn't want to be the appetizer for a zombie apocalypse because it backed up to a cemetery with a moat in the middle, and Brett and I have asthma. We would have never outrun the zombies. Never. We were going to be dead.
I'm glad
And
this on.
yeah, I did not want to be an appetizer. Um, and so, but once we moved here, we're like, all right, we're using our VA loan. And we realized that we could afford a much bigger house for the same payment
Right.
as we had in Connecticut because the interest rate was less.
Right. And you had no mortgage insurance.
Mhm. Yeah. It was so many benefits. And I'm like, why didn't we do this before? But again, we were under the impression it's a one-time shot, which
Right.
it's not. And so we figured this was gonna be our most expensive house. So why not use it then? And that we would have a harder time buying, especially like in 02 and 06, because the market hadn't crashed yet in 06, and it was just taken off in 02, that it would be impossible to compete with someone with a VA loan.
Right. And I think, we didn't have internet then. So there wasn't, ability to research stuff. It was, we literally based a lot of what we knew from friends that we knew in our circle of friends who based their information on their friends and their circle of knowledge. So, I think the veterans of today and the soldiers of today are they're much better informed and
Thank God. Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's also one of those things of back then, yeah, we were still younger. So we were listening to what mom and dad had to say. You're listening to what your uncle's saying or aunt or whatever at the, family table. You're listening to the neighbor who's much older and much wiser. And every single one of them were 1,000% incorrect.
right.
Mhm.
Thank you. If you be listening, which I don't think he's ever on Facebook,
Yeah.
thank you. He really put us in the direction of homeownership.
That's
And
awesome.
agent back then,
Yeah.
never.
Well, and I'm grateful to my ex's dad for putting us on the path because it definitely builds a wealth. And again, I don't know any other house I could have the colors on the walls that I have. I'd be stuck with this same gray in every room in my house.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Base living was basic
Yeah, the cinder block gray walls.
shared charge. Yeah. It was, it was good.
Yeah, it's always great memories, and somehow or another, we all made it through there. Amazing stories, amazing friendships, and now we get to take what we learned and give it to our clients.
And it's such a privilege again.
Yeah, so as always, I adore you. Can't wait to see you again. And I do appreciate you doing this with me.
I appreciate you and all of our veterans always.
Hey, bye, hi.
I don't know how to turn this off.